Welcome back to the deep dive. I spent the last 48 hours with the market intelligence stack you sent over, and I have to admit, I ended up just staring at my screen for a solid 10 minutes trying to process the first story.
I can imagine. It was a strange week.
Strange doesn't even begin to cover it. We usually talk about market efficiency, right? The idea that, prices reflect all the available information.
That is the theory they teach in Business 101, yes.
Yeah.
The efficient market hypothesis.
Well, this week's research seems to be a dedicated case study in disproving that theory entirely. I mean, we have a former karaoke machine salesman crashing the stock price of global logistics giants.
And that's just the start of it.
It really is. We have a connection between stolen snow crabs and government surveillance software. And we have a bond insurer's fate, its entire fate, resting on an obscure administrative law case at the Supreme Court.
It's a messy week, but honestly, this is my favorite kind of market environment.
Really? Why is that?
Because the noise is so loud. I mean, it's deafening. And that actually creates these massive pockets of opportunity. You just have to be willing to look past the headline hysteria.
And that's the theme we're going with today. Signal versus noise. Because when I read about Algorithm Holdings, which is the karaoke company, by the way, my first instinct was to laugh. I honestly did. But the market didn't laugh.
No, it didn't.
The market panicked.
It did. And to understand why, we have to talk about how modern markets actually function. Because humans weren't the ones driving the bus on Tuesday morning.
Okay, so let's set the scene for everyone listening. We're talking about the Dow Jones Transportation Average. This is, the bedrock index for the entire supply chain.
The trainees, as they call it.
Right. Companies like C.H. Robinson, Landstar, the guys who actually move stuff. The real economy. And this index took a nosedive. We're talking a 4% drop across the board.
In a sector that's stable, that is a crash. It's not like some volatile tech stock. This is the plumbing of America.
Exactly. And the catalyst wasn't a recession warning. It wasn't an oil spike or a jobs report. It was a press release. A single press release from a company called Algorithm Holdings.
Right. And to appreciate the absurdity, you have to look at the forensic details of Algorithm. I mean, you really have to dig in. This is a microcap company.
Micro is being generous.
It is. Their market capitalization is under $3 million.
$3 million?
To put that in perspective for you, a single, decent-sized warehouse owned by C.H. Robinson, just one building, is probably worth more than this entire company.
And until very recently, they weren't even pretending to be a tech company, were they?
Not at all. They were the singing machine company. That was their name. They sold home karaoke kits, little boxes with microphones you hook up to your TV.
Get it!
I'm serious. They sold about $500,000 worth of microphones and speakers last quarter. That's their entire business.
Yeah.
But then they pivoted.
The magic word, pivot.
They issued a press release announcing a new AI efficiency tool for trucking.
Huh.
Now, critically, you have to look at the details here. They have no U.S. clients yet.
None.
They have no proprietary data history in logistics. They have no network. They basically have a slide deck and a new tech-sounding name.
So logically, investors should have just ignored it, laughed it off like I did. But the stock prices of the giant C.H. Robinson, ticker CHRW, and Landstar, LSTR, they tanked. So why does a gnat landing on an elephant cause the elephant to have a heart attack?
Because the investors reacting in the first hour weren't people. They were semantic algorithms.
Bots.
The bots. We are in a market structure now where high-frequency trading bots scan tens of thousands of press releases per second. They're not reading for comprehension. They're programmed to look for keyword clusters.
Yeah, and the cluster here was?
AI, disruption, and trucking. Simple as that.
I see. So the bot sees AI trucking tool, and its logic tree says, AI is deflationary for legacy brokers. That means lower margins. If a new AI entrant is here, margins for C.H. Robinson are going to zero. So short the entire sector.
It is a shoot first, ask questions later mechanism. It's purely syntactic. The algorithm doesn't know that Algorithm Holdings is three guys in a trench coat with a karaoke machine. It just sees the syntax of disruption. It triggers a sector-wide basket trade, dumping the incumbents.
And it does this in microseconds.
Nanoseconds. Before a human analyst has even finished their first cup of coffee, the damage is done. Billions in market cap have evaporated.
Which creates a massive dislocation for anyone who actually does the reading. Because C.H. Robinson isn't exactly sitting around using fax machines, are they?
That is the ultimate irony. I mean, C.H. Robinson has been aggregating lane data and using predictive pricing algorithms since the late 90s.
I was looking at their Investor Day presentations. They've been talking about their Navisphere platform for, what, a decade now? It's all about data science.
It is. They have the largest, most comprehensive data set in the industry. They have relationships with hundreds of thousands of carriers. The idea that a microcap pivot is going to displace their network effects overnight is, well, it's technically illiterate.
But the market doesn't care about literacy in that first moment.
It cares about keywords. But that gap, that chasm between the algorithmic panic and the fundamental reality, that's where the money is.
So the thesis here is fade the panic. It's almost a market axiom at this point.
Yes. The source material calls this pricing in a ghost. Love that phrase. The market is pricing in a competitive threat that doesn't exist. It's a phantom.
A sentiment-driven anomaly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you see quality names like Landstar or CHRW trade down on heavy volume because of a narrative contagion like this, you buy the dip. You let the algos freak out, and you calmly pick up the pieces at a discount.
It's terrifying to think that billions in value can be wiped out by a keyword match. But I guess that's the world we live in now. If the logistics sector is about pricing in a ghost, the next sector we need to look at feels like the market is finally waking up from a dream.
Or maybe a nightmare for some investors?
I want to talk about the EV bubble and what's happening in Detroit.
This is a different kind of panic. This isn't an algorithmic blip. This is panic realization. This is the cold, hard reality setting in.
Explain that. What was the dream they're waking up from?
For the last 3 or 4 years, the mandate from Wall Street to Detroit was absolute. Pivot to electric vehicles or die. Full stop. If you weren't promising a 100% EV fleet by 2030, your stock was considered uninvestable.
It was a capital allocation mandate, really. Pour everything into batteries and electric platform.
Everything. And now the bill is coming due. The numbers from GM and Stellantis this quarter were just brutal.
Brutal is an understatement. I was looking at the notes. We're looking at write-downs totaling over $50 billion across the legacy automakers.
$50 billion. With a B. That's capital they poured into battery plants, into retooling factories in Michigan and Ohio, all assuming a perfectly linear adoption curve for EVs. They thought demand would just go up and up forever.
No, but the consumer didn't show up, not in the numbers they needed anyway.
Not at the price points and functionality they offered, let's be honest. EV sales were down 30% in Q4 2025. That's a collapse.
And what's driving that?
It's a perfect storm. The federal tax credits were repealed, which took $7,500 out of the equation overnight. You still have persistent range anxiety, especially outside of California. And of course, high interest rates make a $60,000 electric truck a much harder sell.
So now the inventory is just sitting on dealer lots.
Piling up. So the automakers are doing a strategic retreat, a pivot back.
They're going back to what works. I saw reports that they are retooling lines that they just retooled for EVs, back to build gas-powered heavy-duty trucks again.
The V8 engine is back from the dead.
It never really died. It just went into hibernation in the corporate strategy decks.
That's a good way to put it. But here's where the second-level analysis comes in. This is where you find the real opportunity. When the market decided gas is dead, it indiscriminately punished the entire supply chain.
The baby's thrown out with the bathwater.
Exactly. Look at a company like BorgWarner, ticker BWA.
Right. BorgWarner is a classic car guy stock. They make turbochargers, transmission components, transfer cases, all the complicated, greasy stuff that makes combustion engines go faster or more efficiently.
Correct. And because they are so deeply tied to the internal combustion engine or ICE ecosystem, they've been trading at a depressed multiple for years. The narrative was simple. The world is going electric. BorgWarner is a dinosaur. Sell.
But if Detroit is pivoting back to gas, and especially hybrids, which use a lot of their components, BorgWarner should recover just on that news alone. That's the first-order effect.
That's the base case, yes.
Yeah.
That's the simple, obvious trade. But there is a much bigger, much more interesting story hidden inside their engineering division that the market has almost completely missed. It's a state change event for the company.
Okay, you have my attention.
It turns out BorgWarner isn't just a car parts company. They are a thermal management and power generation company. That's their core competency.
I saw the note in the research about stationary power, but I have to admit, I didn't immediately make the connection. How does a turbocharger relate to the broader tech market?
Think about what a turbocharger actually does. It's a marvel of engineering. It's a turbine that spins at incredible speeds. We're talking hundreds of thousands of RPMs to compress air. It has to manage intense heat and pressure to generate power efficiently.
So they're experts in small, powerful, hot-running turbines.
Deep proprietary expertise in microturbines and heat transfer. Now ask yourself,
Yeah.
what is the single biggest bottleneck for the artificial intelligence revolution right now?
It's not chips anymore. We've talked about this. It's electricity, power.
Exactly. We are running out of power. The grid is tapped out. The wait times for new grid connections are measured in years, not months. If you're a hyperscaler and you want to build a new gigawatt-scale data center to train the next GPT model, you cannot wait 5 years for the local utility to build a substation and transmission lines.
You lose your competitive edge in a month, let alone 5 years. You need power on-site right now.
Which leads to the punchline.
So you're saying Borg-Warner is taking their engine tech and repurposing it for data centers?
Yes. They just won a major contract to supply natural gas-powered turbine generators for AI data centers. They are effectively building mini power plants that sit right next to the server farms. It's distributed power generation.
That is a massive pivot. That's a whole new business line. They go from being a legacy auto supplier subject to cyclical car sales
To a critical AI infrastructure play, riding the biggest secular growth trend of our lifetime.
and the market hasn't priced this in.
Not even close. Everyone is chasing NVIDIA and the chip makers, or they're looking at pure plays like Vertiv, ticker VRT, for liquid cooling solutions. Those are the obvious plays. But Borg-Warner is the hidden picks and shovels play for the energy crunch. The market sees a turbocharger maker. Smart money sees a solution to the grid crisis.
It really emphasizes that you can't just look at the sector label. You have to look at the underlying engineering capabilities.
That's where the alpha is. In the footnotes of an engineering journal, not the headline on CNBC.
Okay, speaking of connecting dots that seem totally unrelated, let's move to our second-order Oracle section.
My favorite part of the stack. This is where things get really interesting. We look at a headline event, and instead of trading the event itself, we trade the ripple effect, the consequence of the consequence.
And the headline event this week is, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this, stolen snow crabs.
I know. It sounds like a plot from a bad heist movie.
But the numbers are serious. I saw the freight industry report. Cargo theft is up 60% year over year. That's a huge spike.
It's a crime wave. But the thieves aren't smashing windows and grabbing boxes. They're much more sophisticated now.
And they aren't stealing iPhones or cash. They're targeting frozen lobster and snow crabs. So why seafood?
It's the perfect crime when you think about it. First, high-value density. A single truckload of snow crab can be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
Second, it's completely untraceable. There are no serial numbers on a crab leg. It's a commodity. And third, and this is the genius part, the evidence is eaten. Once that crab enters the restaurant supply chain, it's gone. Vanished.
But the mechanism of the theft is what caught my attention. It's not what you'd expect. They aren't hijacking trucks with guns on the highway.
No, this is white-collar crime meets blue-collar logistics. They're using what the industry calls paperwork schemes.
Which makes this a tech story, not just a crime story.
Precisely. The thieves are hacking into logistics email chains, or they're just using social engineering. They create fake bills of lading, fake pickup orders. They impersonate a legitimate trucking company.
So they just show up at the warehouse door.
They show up at the Port of Long Beach with paperwork that looks 100% legitimate. The QR codes scan, the names match. The warehouse manager, who's got 100 trucks waiting, he looks at the paper, looks at the truck and says, "Yep, you're good." They load up the crabs and the truck just drives off.
And nobody knows it's been stolen.
Not until the real truck shows up 3 hours later and the manager says, "What are you talking about? We already gave the crabs to your guy." By then, the thieves are long gone.
So this isn't a physical security problem. This is an identity verification problem. It's the who are you really question at an industrial scale.
Exactly. It's an entity resolution problem. The physical padlock on the warehouse doesn't matter if the data layer says open the door. And this is where the investment thesis comes in. If the entire supply chain is bleeding billions of dollars due to identity fraud, who do you hire to fix it?
The research points straight to Palantir, ticker PLTR.
Palantir. This is tailor-made for them. The White House is already holding emergency meetings with the American trucking associations about this specific surge in theft. This is becoming a national economic security issue.
So what can Palantir do that a normal software company can't?
They can build a governance operating system. They can integrate dozens of disparate data streams, email verifications from the shipper, carrier history from the DOT, GPS data from the truck, driver biometrics, warehouse entry logs. And their platform can flag anomalies in real time.
So like, hey, this driver's phone is pinging from a weird location, or this carrier has never picked up from this warehouse before, that kind of thing.
All of that and more. Palantir is usually associated with the CIA or military targeting, finding terrorists. Using them to track frozen shellfish seems like overkill, right?
It does seem a little intense.
But not when you consider the scale of the financial loss and the potential for massive high-margin government contracts. This gets branded as supply chain security. It fits perfectly into Palantir's wheelhouse of providing a governance OS for complex organizations.
So you aren't buying Palantir because of a war in Eastern Europe. You're buying them because the logistics industry is desperate to stop bleeding cash to paperwork fraudsters.
The Snow Crowd Index for Palantir is a perfect second-order trade.
I love that. Okay, let's move to a heavier topic, but one with a very clear cause and effect chain. This one involves public health, vaccine mandates.
This is what we call a grim arbitrage, and we have to be very clear here. We're stripping away all the politics, all the emotions, and just looking at the mechanics of public health and the predictable market reaction.
The news is that allies of the current HHS Secretary, RFK Jr., are launching a coordinated campaign. They're going state by state to repeal or weaken school vaccine mandates.
We're seeing bills introduced in at least 9 states so far, places like Mississippi, West Virginia, Idaho. They're trying to allow for broad personal belief exemptions.
And we know, historically and statistically, what happens when mandates are relaxed.
It's not a mystery. Vaccination rates drop. It is a simple, direct correlation. When the friction to opt out is removed, more people opt out. It's just human nature.
And when vaccination rates drop below the herd immunity threshold, which is usually around 95% for something highly contagious like measles, you get outbreaks.
Exactly. Biology doesn't care about your political affiliation. A virus is an opportunist. If the immunity wall in a community has holes, the virus gets through. We're already seeing pockets of measles, whooping cough, even mumps in areas where vaccination rates have declined.
So the thesis here is that this policy push will, unfortunately but inevitably, lead to a surge in preventable childhood diseases.
It's a predictable outcome based on decades of public health data.
So as an investor looking at the second-order effect, where does the money go? How do you trade this?
It goes to diagnostics. The source material highlights a company called QuidOrtho, ticker QDOL. They are a major player in rapid diagnostic testing, the little kits you see in a doctor's office.
Because every time a kid gets a fever and a rash in a school district where there's a measles outbreak,
the parents are going to panic and rush to the pediatrician or the local clinic.
And the clinic can't just guess. They need to test. Is it the flu? Is it COVID? Is it RSV? Or is it measles?
And that's where QuidOrtho comes in. Testing volume is the direct beneficiary of public health volatility. It's a grim thought, but it's a hedge. If you think the public health infrastructure is going to get more chaotic, you buy the companies that sell the tools to diagnose the chaos.
It's grim, but I see the logic. Public health arbitrage. Okay, one more second-order effect before we switch gears to the legal side of things. This one connects big tech to law enforcement.
A very powerful connection.
It's about Meta and their smart glasses.
This is a masterclass in strategic timing. The New York Times reported that Meta, Facebook, is planning to introduce facial recognition capabilities into their Ray-Ban smart glasses. But notice when they're planning to do it, the timing is key.
The report says they are timing it for a period of political turmoil.
Right. They're not going to roll this out on a quiet Tuesday in August. They're waiting for a moment when the entire news cycle is absolutely dominated by election fallout or some massive national crisis. They want to slip this feature in when the privacy advocates, the media, and the regulators are all completely distracted.
It's the Overton window strategy. Shift the norms of what's acceptable while nobody is looking. But why does this benefit Axon, ticker AXON? Axon makes tasers and body cams for cops. Meta makes social media gadgets for consumers. What's the link?
Meta is the icebreaker. They're the Trojan horse for the technology. Right now, there's a very strong social and legal taboo against real-time, persistent facial recognition in public by the government.
For sure. If the police tried to roll out a program tomorrow where every cop's body cam was actively scanning faces against a database 24/7, there would be riots. Civil liberties groups would sue them into oblivion. It's too dystopian.
What if everyone's nephew is already wearing Ray-Ban Meta glasses that do the exact same thing to find their friends in a crowd at a concert?
It normalizes it.
It completely normalizes it. If Meta makes the technology feel like just a cool, convenient consumer feature, the social taboo evaporates. The very expectation of privacy in a public space disappears bit by bit.
And once that privacy barrier is gone, the police can go to City Hall and say, well, look, the public is already doing this. Why can't we use it to find a fugitive or a missing child?
And that unlocks the massive, massive value for Axon. Their entire ecosystem of evidence management, their cloud storage, their software suites, it's all built and ready for this. If facial recognition becomes standard operating procedure for law enforcement, Axon software as a service contracts become infinitely more valuable.
So Mehta takes all the regulatory heat and public backlash.
And Axon quietly reaps the institutional reward on the other side. It's a brilliant, if slightly terrifying, symbiotic relationship.
It really shows how these massive tech companies can essentially alter the legal and social landscape just by shipping a consumer product.
They create a new reality.
Yeah.
And then the law and the market has to catch up to it.
Speaking of the law catching up, we need to move to our binary catalyst section. This is the part of the show where I usually get a headache from the legalese, but you assured me this is the most asymmetric trade on the board right now.
It is. It's a big one.
We're going to Puerto Rico.
We are. And I know sovereign debt restructuring sounds like watching paint dry, but trust me, this is a high-stakes poker game being played at the highest levels all the way up to the Supreme Court. The ticker to watch here is MBIA, ticker MBI.
And they are a bond insurer, a monoline insurer.
Yes, they insured billions of dollars of Puerto Rico's debt. When the island effectively went bankrupt, MBIA was left holding the bag. They've been stuck in this litigation nightmare for years, fighting for recoveries.
But the situation in Puerto Rico is unique because of how it's being governed right now, financially speaking.
That's the crux of it. It's not just the local governor in San Juan calling the shots, is it?
No. Under a federal law passed by Congress called PROMESA, Puerto Rico's finances are controlled by something called the FOMB, the Financial Oversight and Management Board. The locals call it La Junta.
The board. And this is an unelected board appointed by the U.S. government to basically clean up the fiscal mess.
And this board hasn't exactly been friendly to the creditors to companies like MBIA.
Friendly. They have been incredibly hostile. Their entire strategy has been to cram down debt, to force creditors to take massive haircuts on what they're owed. Their public stance is essentially, there is no money, the island is broke, take what we give you or get nothing.
But there is a challenge to the board's very existence, its power structure. That's sitting on the Supreme Court docket right now. The case is Trump v. Slaughter.
Correct. And on the surface, it doesn't look like it has anything to do with Puerto Rico.
I looked this up. It's technically an employment law case, isn't it? It's about the appointments clause of the Constitution.
It is. The core legal question is, can the President of the United States fire the heads of independent agencies at will without cause? Think of the head of the SEC or the Federal Reserve.
The unitary executive theory.
Exactly. That theory says, yes, the president is the boss of the entire executive branch, period. Anyone working in it serves at his pleasure.
And the members of the Puerto Rico Oversight Board are technically federal officers.
Correct. So if the Supreme Court rules, and the legal tea leaves suggest a ruling is expected around February 20th that the president can fire independent commissioners, that precedent immediately applies to the Puerto Rico board.
So the implication is a new administration, or even the current one, could come in, fire the current creditor hostile board, and replace them with a new board that, well, that believes in paying debts.
Precisely. And this is the key. The stakes are not theoretical. This isn't just about being nicer to creditors in negotiations. This is about what the source material calls hidden cash.
Right, I saw the number, $3.7 billion. That's a lot of money. Where is this money supposedly coming from?
It's allegedly sitting on the balance sheet of PREPA, the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority, the utility. Creditors, including MBIA, have filed motions in court claiming the current board is artificially suppressing the revenue numbers.
Hiding the money.
Hiding about $3.7 billion in liquidity to justify stiffing the bondholders. They're saying, we're broke, while sitting on a pile of cash.
That is a massive amount of money to just misplace.
It is. Yeah. And if the Supreme Court ruling breaks the board's independence, and a new board comes in and finds that $3.7 billion, the recovery rate for MBIA doesn't just inch up, it skyrockets.
So MBIA stock is effectively a call option on a Supreme Court ruling.
It's a pure binary event. If the board's power is upheld, the stock continues to drag along in the mud. If the board becomes fireable and that cash is unlocked, the stock is a multi-bagger. The market is ignoring it because it's complicated legal plumbing, but the setup is textbook asymmetry. High reward, defined risk.
It's wild. A constitutional argument about presidential firing power could determine the solvency of a bond insurer in New York. While we are on the topic of hidden risks and forensic analysis, let's touch briefly on this concept of the Epstein filter.
This is a grim, but I think a necessary evolution in how institutional investors conduct due diligence. It's a new risk factor.
We've seen a string of very high-profile resignations recently. The notes mention Catherine Remler, the general counsel at Goldman Sachs, ticker GS, and Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem at DP World, the giant port operator.
These are not small players. Remler was one of the top lawyers on Wall Street at one of the most powerful banks in the world.
And they resigned because of the release of newly unsealed documents detailing their past ties and interactions with Jeffrey Epstein.
Right. And the market is finally realizing that this isn't just tabloid fodder or ancient history. From a risk management perspective, it represents a massive governance blind spot.
How so? What's the practical risk?
The thinking is, if a C-suite executive has these kinds of opaque ties to a criminal operation like that, what else are they hiding? What other poor judgments have they made?
It speaks to character, to judgment, and to susceptibility to blackmail.
Exactly. It speaks to the culture of the firm that promoted them. And so institutional capital, we're talking about huge pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, they are starting to apply what the research calls an Epstein filter.
Meaning?
They are freezing capital allocations to firms, to hedge funds, to private equity, where the leadership has these unresolved reputational risks. The risk of a sudden resignation or a scandal is too high.
So governance risk isn't just a box you check on an ESG form anymore. It's becoming a real hard-nosed valuation metric. If a CEO is potentially compromised, the stock gets a discount.
The cost of capital goes up when character is in question. That is the new reality, plain and simple.
All right, we have covered some very dark territory: economic warfare, disease, surveillance, bankruptcy, and now governance scandals. I think we need a palate cleanser. Let's go to the lab.
I am so glad we are ending here because, honestly, the science section this week is the most optimistic part of the entire stack. It's genuinely mind-blowing. The timeline for what we used to call future tech has accelerated dramatically.
Let's start with the big, undeniable win, CRISPR. We have been talking about gene editing as a someday technology for a decade. But with the approval of Casgevy, it's here. It's now.
It is. Casgevy is the therapy for sickle cell disease from Vertex and CRISPR Therapeutics. It's been approved by the FDA. It's being used on patients. And the mechanism, the way it actually works, is just beautiful in its elegance.
So remind us, sickle cell is a genetic mutation that misshapes red blood cells. They become rigid and crescent-shaped, causing incredible pain, blood clots, and organ damage. It's been incurable.
A brutal, lifelong disease. But here is the trick. Here's the brilliant insight. We all have a gene for something called fetal hemoglobin.
Fetal hemoglobin?
It's a special kind of superhemoglobin that we use when we are developing in the womb. It's incredibly efficient at grabbing oxygen.
But then we're born and it turns off, right?
Exactly. A genetic switch flips. A gene called BCL11A activates. And it suppresses the fetal hemoglobin gene and turns on the gene for adult hemoglobin. For most of us, that's fine. But for sickle cell patients, that adult hemoglobin is broken.
So Casgevy doesn't go in and fix the broken adult gene?
No, that's the genius of it. That would be much harder. Instead, it uses CRISPR to go in and break the switch that turns the fetal hemoglobin off.
It breaks the brake.
You're breaking the suppressor. By editing the BCL11A gene and disabling it, the body's machinery says, oh, I guess I should make that fetal hemoglobin again. And it does. The patient's own body starts producing this perfect, healthy, super efficient baby blood.
And that functionally cures the disease.
It eliminates the painful crises. For all intents and purposes, it is a cure. And it proves that we can use gene editing not just to patch broken things, but to reprogram the body's own developmental operating system. It's a paradigm shift.
That is just mind-blowing. But the thing that really made me feel like I was living in a sci-fi novel was this concept of the synthesis engine. This is where AI meets biology head-on.
This is generative biosynthesis. It's one of the most exciting frontiers in science. So we all know about large language models like ChatGPT.
Yeah.
You feed it the entire internet, and it learns the patterns of human language and can write poetry or code.
Right. It's a pattern-matching machine.
Now imagine you take that same AI architecture, but instead of feeding it English text, you feed it the genomic sequences of millions of bacteria.
The DNA code of bacteria. Why bacteria specifically?
Because bacteria are the greatest chemists on Earth. They've been fighting a brutal, microscopic war for survival for 3 billion years. And to survive, They invent novel chemical weapons to kill other bacteria. We call those chemical weapons antibiotics.
But I thought we were running out of antibiotics. That resistance is rising and we found all the easy ones.
We've run out of the ones we can grow. See, 99% of bacteria in the wild are unculturable. Can't grow them in a petri dish in a lab. They just die. And if you can't grow them, you can't see what amazing molecules they produce. They are biological dark matter.
So how does the AI help solve that?
We can still go out into the soil or the ocean and sequence their DNA. We have the source code, we just don't have the living organism. So we feed that source code into the AI. The research mentions combining models like Olmix with anti-smash 8.0, and the AI reads the DNA and predicts the chemical structure of the molecule that bacteria would make if it were alive.
It hallucinates the molecule based on the genetic instructions.
In a scientifically rigorous way, yes. It hallucinates the structure of a brand new, undiscovered antibiotic based on the genetic blueprint. And then once we have the structure, we can synthesize that molecule in a lab without ever needing to see the living bacteria.
That is profound. It's decoupling drug discovery from biology. We are basically downloading new medicines from the cloud of life.
It unlocks a potential $10 billion opportunity in solving antimicrobial resistance. But more importantly, it gives humanity a new weapon against superbugs, just as our old weapons are failing.
And the report mentions they're applying the same generative logic to other massive problems like anti-aging hormones and non-addictive painkillers.
The painkiller one is absolutely critical, especially given the opioid crisis. This is the NAV 1.7 project. They are using AI to design a gene therapy that specifically targets chronic pain.
But the problem with gene therapy has always been delivery, right? You inject the virus and it goes everywhere in the body. You don't want to turn off pain sensors in your heart or your brain. That's dangerous.
Exactly. You only want to target the specific neurons that transmit pain signals. In this case, the dorsal root ganglia, the DRG. These are the little nodes along your spine that act as the gatekeepers for pain.
So how does the AI help?
The AI, in an AlphaFold-style process, is designing a specific AAV capsid. Think of it as a custom-designed delivery truck that only has the keys to enter those specific DRG pain neurons and nowhere else.
So it's a precision-guided missile for gene therapy. It drops off the payload, the gene that turns down the volume on pain, only where it's needed.
Correct. No opioids, no addiction risk. Just a precise one-time genetic volume knob for chronic pain. It is the holy grail of pain management.
It's just amazing to think that while the stock market is panicking about AI ghosts in the trucking industry, the same underlying technology is being used to design the end of chronic pain.
It's a tool. In the hands of a karaoke company with a press release, it's a bubble. In the hands of a dedicated biologist, it's a cure.
That is a perfect summary. We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We saw how algorithmic trading can create incredible opportunities in logistics if you're willing to ignore the ghosts.
We saw how a boring company like BorgWarner is secretly pivoting from the combustion engine to the data center energy crisis. We connected snow crab theft directly into Palantir's government contracts.
We looked at the grim math of vaccine mandates and the resulting boom for diagnostic stocks and that wild binary legal bet on Puerto Rico's debt.
And we finished with the reality that despite all the market noise and the chaos, the fundamental science of our species is advancing at a breakaway speed.
Before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with one final provocative thought. The source material referenced an article by Eric Schmidt, the former Google CEO, about the future of warfare, specifically drone versus drone warfare.
Right. And his argument is that the future battlefield isn't about tanks or planes. It's about fully autonomous swarms of intelligent drones fighting each other. But the implication for us here at home is what's really unsettling.
Because if the U.S. homeland is now considered part of the battlefield, meaning we need domestic defenses against enemy drone swarms, and at the exact same time, we have companies like Meta trying to put facial recognition on everyone's faces.
It raises the ultimate second-order question, doesn't it? If the sky above our cities is full of autonomous interceptor drones, and every citizen on the street is wearing a potential surveillance device, are we building a fortress to protect ourselves? Or are we building a prison?
Are we investing in the security of the future or the end of privacy as we know it?
It's a trade-off. And right now, the market is betting heavily on security.
That is something to chew on while you check your portfolio. Don't just read the headline.
Read the ripples. Look for the signal in the noise.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.